I'm very happy to welcome two of my compatriots here tonight, Christine Wood and her brother Andrew Wood. They have studied the Centre for Thomistic Studies in Sydney, Christine for 10 years, and she's working for a doctorate in theology. She's at doctorate level, I understand. And with the background they've got, studying from Professor Ziegler and a few other people like that, I'd say they're well-grounded, having talked to them. One of the things they want to know, you've heard me speak of Father Woodbury many times. One of the things they want to know is as much as I can tell them about Father Woodbury. But since I was an intimate friend with him for something like 20 years, I think I'm in a unique situation to give them information. Anyway, the Centre for Thomistic Studies, I've mentioned before, is a breakaway from the Aquinas Academy, which was destroyed by a stupid man. A great man, Austin Maloney Woodbury, established the place, and I was proud and happy to say in 1945, first class, I was there. I just graduated in pharmacy and I was there. And the young professors there, or lecturers as we would say in Australia, but here they'd be called professors, established this institute called the Centre for Thomistic Studies. Now there is a Centre for Thomistic Studies at St. Thomas's University in Houston, Texas. And Father Kennedy, who established it, said to me, he said, "What? They've got the same name as we have?" I said, "That's right. You ought to be glad because he'll make their name famous." And I know they were all buddies of mine that established the place. We'd go out on picnics together when we were students, and John Ziegler and different ones became wonderful friends. Anyway, they're here tonight, and I'm very happy to welcome them. Christine is, of course, and Andrew has just come for a visit to see his baby sister. And I'm going to ask Andrew if he'd like to say just a few words to us, if you don't mind.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
I was expecting this after the class, but anyway. Yeah, I went to the Centre for Thomistic Studies in Sydney for 13 years. Most of that was 1 to 3 nights a week.
By the way, it took an hour's travel.
Yeah, we travelled an hour each way to get to the class. Then I also went on Friday, that was usually Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday nights, and then on Friday nights I went to another place which was about an hour and 15 minutes, depending on traffic, to learn about the faith and good Thomistic philosophy. That was under Alice Nelson, which was a very long time student of Dr. Woodbury. She went to Dr. Woodbury's class every night of the week, Monday to Friday, for 20 years, and very devoted student. John Ziegler, one of Dr. Woodbury's students, like Dr. Waters, he taught Christine and I and my other brother, who's actually a missionary in Papua New Guinea, teaching in a seminary at the moment. He taught us for all 13 years, and he taught myself for about 4 or 5 years one-on-one at his house. And so he went through all of Dr. Woodbury's texts with me, word for word, which I'm very, very grateful for. And sadly, he passed away a year and a half, 2 years ago, which was a great blow to me because he was really like my grandfather. He was just such a beautiful man, very beautiful, holy man. And I remember the very first class I went to of John's. I sat in the class and I thought to myself, this is the wisest man I will ever meet in my life. And to this day, that's been true. At the moment, there aren't too many young people who are learning good Thomistic philosophy, and I'm one of them. And there are hardly any people in Australia, New South Wales, Sydney, who know about Dr. Woodbury. And Dr. Woodbury, without a doubt, is one of the greatest Thomistic philosophers and theologians of all time. I've studied a lot of philosophy. I've read all of Dr. Woodbury's texts. I've studied them thoroughly, and I have to say that he would definitely be one of the top 5 geniuses of all time. I've spoken to many of his students, interviewed them about his life and how he taught and how he wrote. And I spoke to his secretary, who was probably one of the longest serving secretaries that he had. And I said to her, G.K. Chesterton says of St. Thomas that he had this amazing gift that everything that he read, he understood it and remembered it the first time that he read it. Now, for those of you who have read anything of St. Thomas, he would have read a lot of things. And so I said to this secretary, do you think Dr. Woodbury had that same gift? And she took a while and thought about it, and she said, I'd have to say yes, because of the way he wrote what he wrote. He just sat at a typewriter, 2 fingers, and just punched it out. And it was pretty much right the first time that he wrote it. And it was all off the top of his head, and he had a couple of books next to him, and every now and then he'd go and make references to his very small library. So I really, really encourage you to study Dr. Woodbury's texts. They're not notes, they're texts, as he used to say, I'm told, because you will not find a piece of literature like Dr. Woodbury's texts. You'll never see a piece of literature like his texts. It's totally unique. Not just what he wrote, but how he wrote it, how it's all organised. So if you get a chance to study them, I really, really highly encourage you to study them. It will be one of the greatest things you'll ever do in your life. Doesn't matter how old you are when you start either. Just start. Doesn't matter where you start, metaphysics, logic, psychology, ethics, whatever, just start. And stick at it. My sister and I, we've seen many people come to classes exactly like this. They've come, they've stayed for a year or two, and then they've gone. And we've stayed for 13 years. Thank God. There's not a day that goes by that we don't use the philosophy that we were taught by John Ziegler, Alice Nelson, and Dr. Woodbury. So I just highly encourage you to learn it as best as you can and pass it on to whoever you can, okay, in charity. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It was a tremendous gift to me to be able to study all those years at the Academy. I was the first to go abroad, get a doctorate and come back. There was one who went before me, but he didn't come back. He ran into financial problems. And then Dr. Deegan came back, and then Dr. Boland came back, going abroad. We did not trust the Australian universities in philosophy. A certain priest who taught in the seminary and at that time had taught pretty well every other priest, young priest in Sydney had taught them their philosophy. He suddenly left the priesthood, left the church, and became what Dr. Deegan called the most militant atheist in the University of Sydney, ex-Father John Bernheim. What's the principle? Corruption of the best is the worst. Never forget that. And he said, no Christian will get into this university if I can stop them. Even, I believe it was the Sydney Morning Herald even said, deplored what he said. He said, I may be wrong. He did say that, and they praised him for that. It's the only sensible thing the man said. Married, of course, a divorced woman. Like Father Roger Pryke, married another divorced woman with about 9 children. It taught him a lesson, I'll bet. 9 children. So, we... In the Encyclopedia of Philosophy, under the title of Thomism, you'll find Sydney a great centre of learning of Thomism. You may not have seen that. That's in the encyclopedia. I'll show you that when we go home. Encyclopedia of Philosophy. And it is a great centre of learning of Thomism, and continues to be so, thanks to the laity who had the good sense to break away when a certain priest destroyed philosophy and theology at the Aquinas Academy. Father Radford excused him, excuse me, by saying, well, he's a psychologist. That explained away what his problem was. However, I had a priest come here, an oblate father, stayed with the Vincentians and said to me, give philosophy away. He was a psychologist. I said, why? He said, oh, just give it away. It doesn't do anything for you. that introduces me to something I was going to say tonight. When a chemist deals with chemistry, he examines the nature of the substances. He doesn't look at them as natures, he looks at them as chemical substances. But what he's doing, you've heard the principle 1,000 times in this room, do follows be. And the mode of doing follows the mode of being. So there it is, the big principle. Do follows be. In other words, whatever a thing does be, so it gives out the do. Woodbury would hit that. So Thomas says it different ways in different parts of the great Summa. He says that things operate according to their natures. So the chemist depends upon that. He examines silver nitrate to see what you can do with it. And he makes all what we call conversions. You put a chloride with it. Next thing you get a white precipitate, silver chloride. Then he puts some ammonium hydroxide in. And he gets silver diamine chloride and silver ammonium chloride. And this is fantastic. He now knows what it is. It's silver. Nothing else operates like that. He knows the nature from what it does do. And people who run, the example that Father Woodbury would have used is cows on a farm. You treat the cows like cows, not like dogs or cats. You assume what they're going to do is according to their very nature. St. Thomas drops that principle again and again, but in a different way. He'll say, we can count on everything to operate on its, according to its nature. So, the moral order does the same thing. Do follows be. But how, when there's freedom in the do, well then we ask, how ought it do? In consideration of its nature. So, in the science of ethics, the measure of how a thing ought to do is the way it does be. We ought to operate according to the way a thing does be. That's how we measure the objective rule of morals. Somebody might operate against that, act against it, his nature. Well, then we measure the subjective rule of morals. We have a subjective rule of morals to measure that. Did he act in accordance with his conscience? If he did, then he's acted sensibly, at least in accordance with his conscience. He may be wrong about what he did, but was he sincere in doing this or that? Even in marriage tribunals, they will be concerned about what was in the man's mind when he said to this girl, I do, and when she says, I do, were they sincere? Did they act in accordance with their consciences? So the marriage tribunal will take that into consideration. Were they freely acting? Or were they forced to act in that manner? If they were forced to act, then wait a minute now, they're not fully responsible. So they try to find out as much as they can about the person. So the moral order is this. Now, during the last week, where else but WNED or WNET television? What do they have in there about the human soul? And of course, typical, the same way as in Canada, they ask about the existence of God, they always pick on somebody that doesn't know the answer. In other words, they always find somebody who will give mediocre comments. I wrote to Mr. Aiken in Canada, and I said, you can prove the existence of God scientifically. He just ignored it. I'm sure it got through, but he just ignored it. Now, on the soul the other day, what do you mean by a soul? Well, the soul, there are all sorts of things you can mean. You know, they go on and on and on, weave around the subject and not come out with anything sensible. So, they don't know about things like this. We look at the way man operates and we find he's got a soul. We saw all that, we've dealt with all that. The high points we dealt with. Do souls exist in living things to distinguish them from non-living things? Yes. How do we know? By their do's. Then we saw that certain things, there are different 3 levels of do's. Those which are what was it again? Pardon? No. Singly automotive were plants. Doubly automotives were brute animals. Trebly automotives were man. So we found, again, looking at the do's. But every science operates this way. There's a story about some little people in the islands which are north of Australia. They're even looking for them today, wondering if they still exist, because the natives spoke about them. They're wondering in the mountains and the jungles if they still exist. Little people. And, you know, they know what they must be human if they do exist by their do's. In certain parts of Australia, they've found certain drawings, and there are helmets, which means the Portuguese, they believe, came across the northwest of Australia into the centre a bit and had these helmets, and the natives have drawn pictures of them in caves. So, my friends, always, what do? They know they're intelligent by their artistic developments. And we were probably some of the last to be allowed in the caves of Lascaux in the southern part of France. We looked at drawings 8,000 years old, 3 different levels. The first level was covered by calcite, and the natives with the people who were there, the original Gauls or whatever they were, couldn't see the drawings underneath the calcite because they only had flame to light up the caves. Then, probably a couple of thousand years later, more drawings in the same caves, again covered with calcite. Then the latest, this massive bull and the deer and different animals running. And it's thought to be some kind of religious centre. And 2 boys discovered them. It's in the National Geographic magazine. I remember it well. Probably 30, 40, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, they discovered it. And 2 boys dropped a ball down a hole. And they want to get the ball back. Of course, in Australia, you wouldn't do that. You'd be worried about snakes. You'd say, leave the damn ball there. But they wanted to go down, and they got a flashlight, and the lad got a shock. He was in a cave with massive drawings. Then it became open to the public. Archaeologists were delighted. Then they had to close it because people coming in, the same as the caves in Australia, the Jenolan caves, they bring dust in on their coats, and it cluts up the all the drawings and the beauty of the caves. So, my friends, we argued many things and started out as a basic principle, you remember. But as Father Woodbury used to say, you can read books and books on philosophy and never see one principle mentioned. It's very common. So my argument, as I've said, I think we've mentioned this before, with an atheist. What do you so you're denying the existence of God? Yes. What are you denying? The proper principle, the common principle, the fact, or the nexus? I don't know what you're talking about. No, my friend, you don't know what you're talking about. I've told you that before. Well, it's all around this. We look at effects. We look at effects, we argue back to the cause of the effects. And we saw that man needs to be satisfied, his freedom of will, by the satisfaction brought on by unlimited good. Nobody's happy, really happy, until they get that unlimited good. And they can only be given, that happiness can only be given by unlimited good. Good that's enduring, etc., etc. We saw that in the section on happiness. We saw there's only one being, which we will prove, that's to come yet, in this course, that there's only one being with unlimited good. That's the being with unlimited being, because every being has goodness in its nature. So the unlimited being will be unlimited good. The Anglo-Saxons called it God. And it's funny to hear, as I heard some Communist Party members one day speaking to me in the Sydney Domain about the God. They said, we have an idea of a God because the pagans always used to have, the ancient peoples had many gods. And they dropped them one by one, found them useless, and there's only one left. It's just the opposite way, my friends. They all started with one God, not many gods. And the many gods are a sign of degeneration of their culture, like the Egyptians and the Greeks. All the primitive peoples, the New Guineans, the Australian Aborigines, North American Indians, all the people who have any primitive background have one god in their background or in their culture. Just the opposite to what these people who are trying to use the idea of explaining away. I used to smile when my classmates in the University of Montreal, used to say, "What does explain away mean?" Professor Descartes said, "I don't know how to say that in French. There's no expression in French of explain away. Only the English have that." Because he'd have a little dig at the English over that. But it's like I remember one of my classmates there at the university said, "What does the verb to get mean? You get by, get on, get with, get out, get to it, etc., etc. Get along. What does get mean?" I say, "Je ne sais pas, I don't know." I just admit it. It saved me a lot of argument. So, my friend, objectively, what gives happiness is the unlimited good. That's God. Subjectively, what gives happiness is our possession of that. We can have a perfect or more perfect or less perfect possession of that. So that thing which is the object of the will, the total object, complete, everlasting, and certainly not boring, is unlimited good. It's infinite good, everlasting. And the notion of the infinite is this: no matter how much you take, there's more to come. Never forget that. I remember that wonderful Dominican father who died last year, good friend of mine, Father Pierre Conway, didn't think of his name for a second. On the edge of the Elements of Education, his book is, to my mind, the best book written on the philosophy of education. It's a beauty. The Elements of Education. Very lovely little dedication to me inside his book. And he gave me another book of his. And Father Conway sat up one night criticizing the scientific notion of the infinite, which was all around the subject but not on it. But that's the notion infinitum, unfinished. The notion of the infinite. No matter how much you take, there's more to come. We'll see that very much in the proofs, the scientific proofs, the existence of God, when we come to it. So that's what God has: unfinished goodness, unlimited attraction. Goodness means what all desire. That's how Aristotle defined it. That which all desire is the unlimited good. Is good. Well, unlimited good means everybody must, whether they like it or not. No matter what we do, we see some good in it. The rapist sees good, otherwise he wouldn't do it. He doesn't pay attention to the evil. That's his problem. That could be a subjective cause or maybe some objective cause in his life somewhere. Anyway, I mentioned these few words tonight just by way of completion of the section on happiness. It cannot be created goods. People would say he's good, such as riches or wealth, honor or renown, bodily strength, bodily beauty, bodily health, or non-bodily things such as pleasure, self-esteem, self-respect, science, virtue. None of these, or any some of these even, that's not happiness. It is God alone. Man's appetite is towards infinite good. But God and He alone is infinite good. Therefore, God and He alone is the perfectly satiative good of man. So well does St. Augustine say, "Thou hast made us for thyself, O God, and our heart is not at rest until it rest in thee." And I very joyfully put that on my only son's little grave. I put that epitaph. So read those notes through, or that text through for yourself. And we speak about the natural and supernatural ultimate end of man. We have the assurance through the supernatural order, or through the order of revelation, that we can get that. It's possible for us to get it. But not alone. we have to be helped. So I've made a few words down on page 92 for that for you, and I think you'll read them through to your own satisfaction. Now, I do believe we started on the unity of the human organism. Did we start that last class? No, I don't think we did start it, no. Man is one substance. Boy, don't we know it. You get a pain in the toe, a pain in the neck, or a pain in other places, and you'll try to do an exam. Doesn't work. The Passionist fathers in Australia, you know the Passionist fathers, those fellows with the loose habits? Very passionate. I grew up in a Passionist parish, and we had jokes over that. I remember on one occasion somebody said they found one of the habits. They wore a cloak, very, very voluminous garments. We saw a cloak line there. Somebody said, "Oh, he's throwing off a bad habit," it looks like. But they did a test. They had the boys do an exam which they'd already done and had done well in. But they gave an exam again, unknown to them. It was sort of somewhat a repetition later. It was disguised a bit. And they played football just before, and they did poorly, very poorly. We are one organism, one unified organism, and if we have a pain in the toe, it's hard to do an exam. I mentioned that Mrs. Jackson, I think her name was, one of my nursing students in University of Ottawa. She broke her tailbone, and I just learned, as a matter of fact, one of my nurses when I was in the hospital a few weeks ago broke her tailbone. You don't hear about that often. Must be very painful. Well, this Mrs. Jackson, the other students came to me and said she's going to have great difficulty doing the final exams. Is there any way I could help her? So I put the exam, question by question, on the blackboard. She was in her 60s. Dear soul. She was a nurse, and that helped her. But having a broken tailbone must be, at the end of your spine, must be very painful. So man is one substance consisting of two principles, namely matter and form. In other words, body and soul. The soul is an incomplete substance. It needs the body for feeding the soul. The body is the instrument of the soul, remember. Remember what somewhere St. Thomas says, is it true that the soul's in the body? No, it's more true to say this, the body's in the soul. So that we are a soul, as we proved before, and a spiritual soul, immaterial, we proved that before, and immortal. And the body's there, but wherever you see body, the soul is there. So my mind is as much in my hand as it is in the head, but it operates on those internal senses. Sense consciousness and its storehouse, the imagination, the cogitative power and its storehouse, sensitive memory. So the intellect operates on them, and that's why we tend to think that the intellect's here. And my sister would say, we think with our brains. No, we don't. We think with our intellect, which uses the brain as the organ of the internal senses, where the organs are located, the internal senses. So the intellect is in, or at least the soul is in every part of the body, if you like. The vegetative powers are basic, and therefore, and even among themselves, there appears to be subordination. Reproduction appears to be the superior, very often. Nutrition, growth, and generation. Nutrition and growth take place without us even knowing about it. We do the eating, but the nutrification which takes place in the cell is operative without us even knowing it. But reproduction, we know it. At least the acts which are reproductive, we know them. Sensitive powers have a certain hierarchization among themselves. The estimative power, that is to say in the animals, subordinates other powers to itself, the lower functioning for the higher powers. I was out, I think it was in Vrel, in 1965, I think it was, and, or was it 55, rather, 55. There's about a 6-foot kangaroo. I'd come up into this mountain along a kangaroo path. Somebody had driven me to the foot of the mountain, the man who owned this big sheep station, and I went, rifle under my arm, and there's a big kangaroo about 6 foot tall. I'm lining him up, and he's there. He wasn't stupid. He's looking around, trying to see any dogs, particularly dogs they're worried about. And it's looking around, swiveling around like this, and its ears were going like that, like a horse's ears, trying to pick up sounds. The whole kangaroo was so well unified, but he was acting in his own self-defense. So he's completely coordinated. And there can be no coordination without subordination. You'll recognize that, of course, as a very important, especially in political theory. Mr. Obama doesn't know anything about that, of course. Does he know anything about anything? Forgive me. There can be no coordination without subordination. So there's always some power subordinating the rest of the powers in the estimative sense. And that kangaroo was watching. I fired. His ears twitched. I suspected the sight of the rifle just a wee bit out. It twitched. And then he sort of turned and looked straight at me. And I said, all right, fella, you win, I'm off. I let him go. I wasn't going to face him at close quarters. But each organ and power exists for the sake of the whole organism. They do not have an end independent of the whole substance. This is internal finality. Remember we said there were 3 marks of life, of imminent action in the living, and one of them was the internal finality. And remember the word organon in Greek is the same as the word instrumentum in Latin. Organs are the instrument. An instrument comes from 2 Latin words, building up. Instrumentum. Instruo in Latin means I build. Mentum in Latin means that whereby you build. So all the powers operate for the sake of a common end, namely my end. The intellect can perform acts of reflection. It can know its own acts, thus reflecting partially over the soul itself. I think I explained the distinction between conscious life, unconscious life, and subconscious life. I'm conscious of you people. I'm looking at Mrs. Benari here. I'm subconscious of Patrick here, but I'm unconscious of what's behind me. So there's sort of 3 levels of knowledge, as it were. And conscious, con, together, scio in Latin, S-C-I-O, means to know together, to know at the same time. In other words, I know that I'm seeing you, but I also know that I know I'm seeing you. That's the meaning of the word conscious. So that's how it is with our intellective life too. We can know some things and have sort of a subconscious knowledge of other things. And of course the psychoanalyst, he operates on this by free association to try and bring to the surface. Because the matter which our soul is bound with obscures complete reflection over the soul. We cannot reflect totally over the soul because of that. So the psychiatrist sometimes, but mostly the psychoanalyst, will bring to the surface, to the conscious level, whatever he can that's in that subconscious and unconscious life. It's difficult to bring that out. It takes a lot of hard work sometimes. Sometimes it'll be revealed to us in a dream. Or sometimes even when you might be even just idly walking through the woods or something or other, suddenly something will hit you. It comes to the surface. There's a lot of stuff down deep in the soul, a lot of stuff which is very rich sometimes. I remember my Austrian friend, Mr. Gaschnang, retired and then didn't know what to do with himself. He started to carve wood. I found he liked carving wood. Next thing, he's a national champion in Canada. don't know what we can do till we actualize it. We go from potency to act by employing what we can do. Father Woodbury had a heart attack. I think that was I've forgotten the year that was. In the 1950s. He's found on the floor, lying on the floor all night. And the cleaner came in next morning, 6 o'clock, and found him there. You know the experience I had recently, lying on the floor, and the police had to break into my house to rescue me for the similar situation. Not for a heart attack, of course, but the accident. And I thought of him during the night, lying on the floor all night with a heart attack. It passed through my mind. Well, sometimes you'll see things when you're lying there, waiting for somebody to discover you. You think of things, all sorts of things. And you actualize things that you don't know you knew about, your capacities. Well, Father Woodbury was told to relax, take the pressure off. And he went to stay with like St. Thomas, he had a sister that he loved very much. And I can't remember her name, out at Borkham Hills. I've forgotten the name now, for the moment. Anyway, he went out there, and his sister's husband was a builder. And he provided him with wood and tools. And Father Woodbury started turning out things like lecterns like this, and bookshelves and all sorts of things. He said, I didn't know I could do that. You don't know what you can do till you try. Great encouragement to the beginner in any field. We often have great power waiting to be released in that unconscious life. We also have a lot of rubbish there sometimes. I can remember stealing a chicken when I was a little boy, just a little thing. Then when they caught up with me, I handed it to my brother. And I ran. My brother used to laugh about that. He used to say, yeah, the dirty dog, he blamed me for stealing the chicken. We were about, I suppose I was about 4 and he was about 3, something like that. Then, of course, I remember some friends stealing apples. And I was looking on, and I was the lookout. Look out, here comes the guy that owns the place. Empty house it was, and they had an apple tree at the back in full bloom. So I got here, qualis unus quisque est talis finis videtur ei. Of what sort someone is, such is the end which seems good to him. So we often make decisions in accordance with our nature, and sometimes not in accordance with our nature. So I've got that laid down there. So that this principle applies to, say, which psychiatrists use and others. You show me what you love and I'll know what you are. Woodbury used to quote that from Aristotle, the old Aristotle, 400 BC. Of what sort someone is, such is the end which seems good to him. That's on page 95, you'll find that. So the analyst encourages the patient to reveal their inner thoughts, their aspirations, their fears, their experiences, and so on, in order to try and discover what motivates that person, what disturbs them, and what impedes their freedoms. That's the function of a psychiatrist, to remove impediments to freedom. And all of this is dealing with the total organization of a human person. In other words, man is one unified operational organism. That was the object of this, to say that we are one, the unity of man. I think we've said enough about that. Then we come to chapter 11 in our text. Education. I lectured on this to the students, the third year practicing students. They go out practice teaching under the direction of a teacher. I think it was third year or fourth year, I've forgotten now. But anyway, they go out there and they came in for a 2-day sort of seminars or something, and I was asked would I give them a talk on the philosophy of education, which I did. They said then where they were asked to do an evaluation of the various teachers, and they said, why don't we learn more about this? We know nothing about that. The teachers were teaching the students without the philosophy of education. So then they appointed 2 teachers to teach the philosophy of education. Neither of them were philosophers, and one I wouldn't trust any of my sons or daughters with him. Now, what is education? First, its very nature, and that's what we want to know. The philosopher always wants to know the natures of things. It's the making of a new man or woman right up to the state of virtue. Now, what does the state of virtue mean? The 6 intellectual virtues and the 4 moral virtues. It doesn't mean to say you have to be perfect in them, although you're better if you are in any of them, especially the moral virtues. A temperament is what we're born with. And as I mentioned, there are 4 basic temperaments, is the recognized standard that you'll see in books, all sorts of books. But in actual fact, as Woodbury used to say, there are about 12, where they're all compounded in us, maybe 2 or more of these basic temperaments, the phlegmatic and all the rest of it. But there'll be about 12 basic types amongst the human person. And character is what we're born with. Temperament's what we're born with. What am I saying? Temperament is what we're born with. Character is what we have when we've got these virtues added to us. And I mentioned about the difference between, we went over some of this last week, didn't we? With Mussolini, etc. They were great individuals, didn't we? I'm sorry.
No, that's where you're going to start this week, Doctor.
Pardon?
That's where you were going to start this week.
Oh, is it? Oh, thank you. Well, there were some men, we've mentioned this before, that's why I thought this. There are lots of great individuals. That's founded upon the matter of man. Great individuals. She walks swaying her hips, and she has a cute way of having hair hanging over her eyes and all the rest of it. You know, the Hollywood types. They're great individuals. But great persons, that's vastly different. St. Francis of Assisi. Hitler was a great individual. Father Woodbury's heard him speak. I suppose he was in Berlin at the time. And he said, he heard Hitler speak. He said, when you heard the man, you'd have to accept what he said. It was so powerful. But I remember Father Geiger, one of the great metaphysicians of the 20th century. I was lucky to have Geiger, Regis, men like that. Truly great. Woodbury called them great men. Good men, he said in Ottawa, in Montreal when I was there. And Regis was the most humble man, yet became very famous as a great philosopher. And Geiger was a very humble man. And I remember seeing him, one of the professors, when I finished my studies there, invited my wife and me up to the mountains to stay at his home with his wife there, and Isabel, and that was Professor Murian. I think I've spoken about him before. The Reds wanted to hang him, and he escaped twice from them. And Father Geiger turned up. Well, no, he was there when I first went there, I think, yes. And here he is in a pair of shorts and a shirt on, this humble man from Alsace-Lorraine, and he was of Germanic origin. And I was the student, and I was better dressed than he was, and I felt a little embarrassed at that. And I remember him, "Comment ça, Monsieur Waters? How is that, Monsieur Waters?" he said. Always humble and spoke to the other person with great respect. When I'd explained something about a plant he was trying to dig out to replant somewhere. He was a great person. And education can help make a great person. Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler, great individuals. St. Francis of Assisi, Aristotle, St. Thomas, Mother Teresa, and so on are great persons. But many potencies need to be actualized. Now, we talked about this. We're unconscious of a lot of the potency we have. We're unconscious of that when we spoke before about the unity of man. They need to be actualized from potency to act in order to know what we can do. If you read the great ideas of the Western world, that book 2 and 3, volume 2 and volume 3, called the Syntopicon, where education, for reference to various authors to see their ideas on education. It's very, very exacting, that index. Education is an immanent act. Who educates me? I educate me. I do the acts of education. I benefit from the acts of education. That's immanent action. Where does the teacher fit in? He's the instrument I use. When a physician, when he treats a patient, the patient is the healer and the healed. He does the act of healing to himself. The doctor removes the impediments. That's the function of a doctor, to remove the impediments. When a leg is broken, he puts the bones together and lets them heal. That's what I went through at the hospital here recently. All those ribs in the side that were smashed. All the bones were, I just had to sit back and take it easy. And look at the pretty nurses. That was much easier than sitting back and taking it easy. And then an orchestra leader. Here's the orchestra in front of him. He doesn't do the act of playing, they're doing it. He removes the impediments. He says, Brian, take your lunch out of that saxophone, play it properly, etc. Like a friend of mine, I'll never forget that, Fergus Mulady. They had a talent night. There was a younger set back in the war years, and we, passionate fathers, asked some of us who were a little older and a little more serious to come and help him with this organisation. We held a talent night. And Fergus Mulady got up there with his saxophone, and the saxophone played all weird sounds. He stopped, he put his hand in the front and pulled out a towel he'd had in there for some reason or other. It brought the audience, the house down. It wasn't meant to be a funny act, it was meant to be serious, but it just looked so funny with the towel in the saxophone. Anyway, education is an immanent act. And the educator removes the impediments. Dr. Kinsella, world famous because of the Nobel Prize on 1963 on the nerve transmission, etc. He said, a teacher might put something 9 ways. You say, what the heck is he talking about? The 10th way you grab it, you've got it. He's removed the impediments to your understanding. That's the function of a teacher. To make it easier for the student to understand. That's why 1 picture's worth 1,000 words. Since I came out of the hospital, I haven't been using the board much. I think the matter doesn't always lend itself to that. I think that's the trouble. But many potencies we have need to be actualized. Education comes from 2 Latin words, that's e plus ducere. Remember Il Duce, Mussolini, the leader, to lead out of. That's what education does. Leads out of us the potencies, the potentialities, and actualizes them. A government, they should induce the conditions so that the following can take place. Harmony, etc. And removing impediments to the common good. It's the people that obtain the common good, and the government removes the impediments, or should. That's what's wrong with the present moves of the government. They're not helping the people to help themselves. They're granting gifts to the people, and it's going to wreck society, this society. We're going to face a frightful inflationary future. Mr. Obama's giving out monies instead of encouraging the people to earn their own monies by removing the impediments. And if you remember when I gave that talk just some time ago, from economic slavery to freedom, Mr. Vadari thinks that that's the best talk I've done, or something like that. He made some remark, didn't he? As Mrs. Vadari's just confirmed. And it was, that's what a government's function is, to remove the impediments. The people will obtain the common good, and the common good is the good of each person and the good of the totality. The good of the United States and the good of the people in it. Having certain properties. Immaterial, common goods are always immaterial. Public goods are material goods that help instruments for obtaining the common good. like public parks, public buildings, etc., warships, etc., police cars. And moreover, the common good, if none lose by everybody sharing in it or taking out police in it. If Mrs. Venari takes some of the common good, peace, order, freedom, justice, civic friendship, nobody's losing. On the other hand, if she contributes towards it, everybody gains. Now, there are three properties of the common good, and you'll search in vain to find them in books. So, the common good, the good of the whole and the good of the parts. Nobody can touch the student's intellect directly. We cannot touch their will or intellect directly. To get at the will, we go through the intellect. To get at the intellect, we go through the imagination. And that's what the teacher does, works on the imagination. A chaplain at Niagara University was puzzled at a conference. What does a teacher do? He gets at the imagination through the external senses, diagrams, talks, etc., discussions, and gets at the imagination. So, healing, growth, nutrition, these are all imminent actions. Did I see a misspelling here? I thought I did. In other words, I do the act, I benefit from the act. What remains within, that's the meaning of the imminent action. In maneo, in and to remain. Within and remain, remain within. So the teacher removes the impediments. And in the St. Thomas, his treatment called De Magistro, concerning teaching, it's in the book called Truth. There is a 3-volume translation of the De Veritate, concerning truth. 3-volume translation. And it's chapter 11 in that, on teaching. I think there are 4 articles. And he's talking about there. Can a man be called a teacher? Is Christ the only teacher? Is the idea behind that. And he shows how we can be called teachers, what a teacher does. Then I went on to say, distinguish. Education is for the sake of the educated, the child. All that a teacher is an instrument. He doesn't do the real education. The child does the education, or the pupil, if you like, does the education, and the pupil benefits from the education. Schooling is not necessarily education. That's what everybody takes it to be today. I've got a Ph.D. Don't you think I'm educated? No. Cuts you down a little bit and knocks the starch out of these people, doesn't it, when they're told that? Training is for the sake of the educator. If I train a dog, that's for my benefit, not for his. Education is for his benefit. Schooling is not necessarily education. Do not equate them, as is so often done. And training is not necessarily education. Evil dictators train children to live in an unjust society. I never forget when I first heard it, oh gosh, that's 100 years ago, in Moscow. The teachers on Friday put 2 plants there. We're going to leave them over the weekend. We're going to water this one, but we'll see if God looks after that one. Then we'll find out if there's a God. What a stupid way to indoctrinate children. Indoctrination is not to give them understanding, but to convince them and bring them over to what we want. If we're an evil dictator, something like that. So Monday they'd go in, possibly this plant, look, see, God doesn't exist because he would have watered that if he had. And the state, we've watered this one. Have you had any experience with that kind of thing, Adam? Yeah, the typical communist method, isn't it? These people from Europe would learn a lot more about this.
They're a little more clever here in America, though.
Pardon?
They're a little more clever with indoctrination in America.
Subtle, probably.
It was easily recognized in communism.
Yes.
So here it's...
Well, see, what did Pravda say?
But that's powerful.
You see the other day where Pravda, the communist paper in Moscow, said the United States is hurtling with embarrassing speed to Marxism. I'm sorry.
That's great.
I was just going to mention that I had talked to Madeline Murray O'Hara.
Oh, yes.
Who she was. She was the atheist that got kicked out of the schools.
Yes.
But I had contacted her because I was just curious.
Yeah.
And she told me that she could prove that God didn't exist. I took my little infant son and put him in the room and left him alone for a week and asked God to take care of him.
Oh,
And that was like,
that's childish, isn't it? Did you all hear that?
Yeah.
Mr.
Excuse
Wagon,
me,
Dr. Wagon.
I didn't hear your comment.
Oh, I just said, it's not that important.
No,
I just said that I believe that power of indoctrination here in North America, it surpasses indoctrination that we ever experienced in the communist system.
It's more subtle
it's not,
here.
It's not even, it's clever, it's
I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
but it's indoctrination already.
All the stuff on WNET and coming out of, what's it, Ontario. What's the one coming, the station from Ontario again? The CBC, yes. All the stuff coming out of there is so stupid, so subtle, yet stupid, on the existence of God or the existence of a soul particularly, which is the two that they've been pushing for quite some time. You know, you get somebody that puts an argument forward and the person is really ignorant of the subject, but puts forward stuff that indoctrinates people. They won't have anybody that's had an educational, real education background. They won't put them on these things. I was with two pro-life people on Channel 2 some years ago. And of course, the woman who knew the least, she spoke the most. I got a telephone call when I got home from one of my ex-students, lived about 150 miles away, and he said, I saw my family and I saw you on television tonight, but why didn't they let you speak? I said, no, don't ask the station that, ask my colleagues that who did that. You see, we believe that the child is human, said this woman. I said, no, we don't. We can prove with utter scientific rigor that it's human. That we believe is the word that the woman came out with. Anyway, I've spelled most of this out for you. Oh, I'm sorry. It's time to take a coffee break.
oh, you
Even
would
they
say
don't have
that
your
word.
coffee.
Why?
Coffee.